Hello, everyone. This is Maya with Charles with Maya Z, and I'm today with Esther Howard. I guess that I'm interviewing not for the first time. Actually, it's my second time, but there is a very good reason for that because Esther, first of all, she's the CEO of Bezyl, a mental health company, and I hope Esther will tell us more about Bezyl, but also because Esther comes with incredible background in clinical research, running clinical trials. So before me giving any details, Esther, first of all, welcome. And second, can you give me a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Hey, Maya, it's so good to see you again. I'm excited to be here. And you know me, I love to talk about what we're doing. But yeah, a little bit of background about me is I've been was in the clinical research industry for a little over almost 20 years, actually. I always say a little over because my launch was actually over 20 years ago in research in health economics of developing countries. So healthcare and how we can improve patients' lives and healthcare in general has always been really important to me. When I shifted into clinical research, I actually started in the finance route and then went
Oh,
into
wow.
operations and running trials and then oversight of those trials and strategy and helping clients with the pathway from molecule to market. So helping small biotechs put their strategy in place, and then also helping big pharma commercialize their assets and their molecules. So and then of course with my finance background, it was, running the entire trial was something I was really good at. I mostly did operations, logistics, and then of course regulatory, making sure that we were inspection ready. And I've been in front of probably every agency you can think of, FDA multiple times, and then all of the global agencies as well, even right down to the Taiwan FDA. Like
Oh,
the
wow.
the agencies were a big part of my career too. So yeah, that's my background, and then I shifted a little bit when I started my own company a little over 3 years ago now. So now here I am.
And you have an amazing story behind this company, a story that we actually that you shared last time we spoke. So I'll make sure that I put this in the link to make sure that everyone can hear this story because still every now and then I tell other people this story because it's really touching and it's very inspiring. But Esther, today I asked you to really come to my interview, like to this interview with your clinical research background because and also, I've heard there is something new that you're working on. So we will touch upon that as well, which is very relevant, relevant to the mini series that I'm doing on understanding the country specific standard of care and the importance of understanding the local standard of care before starting any clinical trial. So you said it very well. You've done all sorts of clinical trials, global ones, from molecule to market. So you've seen a lot. You've worked with small biotech companies, with big pharma companies. From your experience, what is the role of understanding the patient journey, country by country, before you start your clinical trial?
I think that first of all, the patient journey itself needs to be more clearly defined. I learned over
Hmm.
the last few years that when I would talk to, let's say, a project manager and a CRO, what is the patient journey? They would have one way of kind of mapping out what that journey is. And then when I talk to the sponsor or the client who is responsible for the drug or the therapy, they would also have their own. And it was about 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago. Time just flies. I was working with someone in at PRA Health Sciences. They're now called Icon, and she was the first person that said, "Hey, like let's sit down and align with each other on what the patient journey actually is, so that we're all talking about the same thing."
Something like
Because really, it's three prong. It's we've got the standard of care patient journey where a person is born, and then they have health events that go along the way.
that.
Number two is the journey in the current disease, not excluding everything around them. So if we write a protocol for them to be part of a clinical trial, then that current disease in that protocol is really important. And third thing is everything that's going on in their life. And that's where I have really started to put some emphasis in what we're doing at Bezyl, so that educating people, like their journey isn't just illnesses. It's also how they're taking care of themselves and the stressors that may be coming around them. Do they have children, or what is their age group or their ethnicity and the demographics that they live in? In the United States, we say, what is their zip code? But in the rest of the world,
Mm.
like what country are they in, and what region of that country? So their journey is three prong with their actual standard of care health journey, the disease that they're going through, and then perhaps the clinical trial protocol, and to me the most important, but they're all equally important, is like what is their life demographics look like, and the journey that is contributing to these other two things.
And I would add to that. So first of all, I fully agree, and I think that it's really about time to start writing about the difference between standard of care, patient pathway, patient journey.
Hmm.
The reality is that standard of care is really the uh, what is like the, let's say, the experience of the patient that is being defined by either the local reimbursement authorities, basically
Yep.
what the access to treatment, let's like,
Yep.
whether it's private insurance or a government or reimbursement authority, doesn't matter, but actually what is the allowed access to treatment, and not only the treatment but all the procedures around that. So
Yep.
like that's more or less that kind of defines the basic of your patient journey. And then after
Exactly.
that, you have the disease journey, which comes with all other things, like from the symptomatic, but also the perception. Because very often I see, when I read on the topic of quantifying the patient burden, I see people just trying to compare, let's say, one clinical trial to another clinical trial, and the numbers of visits, for example. That's a very good example. But some diseases wouldn't care how many like visits they're gonna have, because for
Right.
multiple reasons, and others one more visit than what they're used to, and that's it. It's the
Yep.
end of the world. It's the perception actually that makes people more receptive or not to some like changes. And yes, like you said, their life is
Yeah.
absolutely like important, and that all together makes the whole patient journey. But why is it important for someone that's running a clinical trial to understand this patient journey? And are there any components of this patient journey that you absolutely must know so that you can optimize your strategy?
Yeah. So again, in this case, I think that there's two lines that I think are equally important. One is, yes, of course, the patient burden is very important, like you just described. It could be like, depending on the disease, if it's a cancer patient and they're a mother and they're trying to extend their life as long as possible. They want every single possible day. They're going to go to their visits. The
Yeah.
burden is going to be welcome to them, because it gives them what they need. So there's the journey in terms of like number of visits, and there's the like you described. But the other part of the journey um, is less clinical than that. It's also looking at what are the things that are part of their daily life. So the reason why this is so important is because I see a lot of people measuring patient burden based on number of visits, and they think, okay, this is like too much for them. But you haven't measured that against what it is that they're actually trying to achieve. My
Mm.
friend who actually inspired the Bezyl, the reason why I launched Bezyl, Lori, before she died, she said it the best. She's like, I'm looking for time and I'm looking for quality with my daughter, so I will literally do anything. And I wish people understood that. So it's really important when we're looking at a clinical trial and we're trying to design it and we're saying patient burden, patient journey, we're thinking about what it is that the patient actually wants to achieve in their life, and the type of demographic of that patient is a pretty good indicator. We can guess a lot. We're we're going to be more educated than we think we are about like what they're probably going to need based on their demographics. And so from a pharma perspective, it's also really important to understand patient journey because when you're looking at the types of visits that or like the types of procedures that a patient wants or needs or that you're going to need in your protocol, there are certain elements of the protocol that you're going to want to put in there for exploratory endpoints are my favorite conversation
Mm.
with pharma and biotech. And I was literally, I'll tell you this story a little bit later, but I was literally 2 days ago meeting with someone who's developing a really cool device. And we were walking through what they're going to do. And both of she and I were like getting really excited about all the exploratory endpoints that we could add to it. But then we realized we're going to completely overwhelm the patient with
Mm.
the participants on this particular trial with these exploratory endpoints and all these other things we want to get while they're in the office doing the procedure. And then we're going to lose all our patients. So like looking at what you actually need in a protocol versus what you want and it could be kind of cool and help you with something else. And then all of the surrounding aspects of their life. And then you can find that formula of like, okay, it's really important to look at the patient journey so we can attract people to the trial, like give them that option to join the trial and participate in a clinical trial that could be potentially life-saving or improve the quality of their life. And then next, keep them there. Because obviously that's the reason we want to consider patient journey. The final thing I want to say about this is that for me, the foundation of why a patient journey is so important is because it's the right thing to look at as humans. Of course, we have data that we need to collect, a protocol that we need to execute, and a drug or a therapy we want to get to market. But the more that we look at the patient journey and just be human, the more it is the right thing to do. And we're helping other people have better lives and in even the participation of a clinical trial protocol. And this is, for me, I'm really passionate about this because I see people slashing their budgets and trying to like strip out anything that they don't need in their budget. And then they're not giving the patients the best experience possible.
Mm. Yeah. Well, Esther, thank you so much for saying that. And I do agree with you. I know that at the end of the day, you go to work, you have to do like you have to fulfill like different KPIs and milestones and stuff. And sometimes we kind of get away from at the end of the day what do we do it for? But you're absolutely right. The main reason for understanding the patient journey is because that's the right thing. You
Yeah.
want to make sure that the patient has the right experience because let's not forget we all depend on these patients, all of us. Like you don't know what you're gonna have tomorrow, or what your close ones are gonna have tomorrow, and like these patients joining clinical trials, they're helping advance medicine. So we all owe
Yeah.
them, and we owe them the focus on making it easier on them. But I have another question, which is a little bit more, let's say, technical from the clinical trial perspective.
Mhm.
My background in feasibility and patient recruitment taught me that the number one question is where are the patients? Where are the eligible patients? And I wonder, like you mentioned about the perception of the patients and like their experience, and that's why patient journey is so important. But if we are very practical, isn't like access to treatments, is that actually the thing that will answer you whether and where to find eligible patients? And how much actually companies are thinking about that?
I think they're thinking about it a lot. But I think that, oh, this is such a great question because I'm so passionate about this one. Let me tell you why. This one like really grips my heart. So my mom, I've talked about my mom a few times on LinkedIn and in different forums, but not a lot. So I'm going to take this opportunity to talk about her. She
Take the
lives
opportunity.
in the Arctic Circle,
Yeah.
literally in Canada, in the Arctic Circle. Access to treatment for her means like it's very limited, very, very limited access to treatment. And so where she lives, there's a health center, and you can get kind of your triaged care there. The dentist comes twice a month. So you have to get into the window of that dentist. There's like certain specialists that will come up once a month, maybe, if you're lucky, if a plane can get up there. And then there's also like the next step is to fly down to the closest city. And then the next step from there is to fly down even further into Canada, down to Edmonton, where there's really good healthcare. So she's actually, even though I'm describing her situation as something that sounds like very unusual, it's not. We have people in the United States, in Montana, for example, that are
Mm,
spread out all over the state. So people's physical access to treatment is one thing, where my mom, like, she lives in the Arctic Circle, incredibly remote, and she can't get access to treatment. And then there's other people around the world in general that, like, access to treatment physically is one thing. But the second part of access to treatment, of course, is the type of care, whether it's the type of what kind of insurance you may have, or what kind of plan you're on with your government, or whatever it is. Every country has its nuances, and I'm not even going to go into my opinions on what's better or not, because that actually is irrelevant. To me, it is what it is. We need to work with what that is, and do our best to evaluate their access to treatment. So when I talk to companies that are looking to start their clinical trials, and this actually just happened a few months ago, someone reached out and said, "Hey, can you help us navigate the Indigenous population in Canada and help us bring clinical trials to them?" And I was like, "Yes, I can." Like, this is like, the fact that you're asking just means the world to me.
mm,
And so then I said, but for what disease? And they told me, and I'm not going to tell you what it is because I don't
yeah,
want to unblind who it was. They told me, and I was like, well, that's not really a prevalent
yeah,
disease in the Indigenous population. So we could set up all of the infrastructure there in the world. And we're not really going to help anybody. Like, you're going to waste a lot of money, and you're going to lose the opportunity to provide access to treatment or clinical trials to the population that you actually do want to target. So for the Indigenous people, I was like, do you have any breast cancer trials? Like, that would be a great one, or something, lung cancer or diabetes. Diabetes is a great one. Those are the types of things. So if you
surprising.
look at access to treatment, it's like, okay, they don't have, like, in the Indigenous population in the Arctic and Canada and the remote population, they don't have access to good treatment for things like breast cancer and
Mm,
lung cancer and diabetes and heart disease, things that are prevalent to them. They have to travel great distances to get that care, and even then, they don't have, like, the best insurance, or the best, like, what they need in order to get what even exists. So to bring a clinical trial to that population is incredibly exciting for them.
mm,
So we ended up talking about a trial that was very relevant to the population, and now I'm supporting bringing them to the north to see if it works. And I will tell you, when I mentioned it to my mom and those at the health center, they're so excited. The
wow.
perception that's the other part of this, is like, there was this perception. We talk on our stages and in our podcasts and stuff about how people don't, well, we gotta, like, try to convince them somehow to have this trial. I'm like, where did that idea come from? Of course, that's possible in some populations of people, some demographics and ethnicities and that type of thing. But in general, it's not the case. You don't know what they want until you offer it to them.
Yeah,
Just
no,
just
absolutely. A
yeah.
great story. A great story, Esther. I have many stories like that, but the recent one that I also want to share, like in that regards. So first of all, about the motivation of people. When they don't have access to the same level of healthcare, like somewhere else, for example, they are definitely more motivated. I'm originally from Bulgaria, and in Bulgaria, for example, we have very good healthcare. For example, access to doctors is super, like, much more easier than, let's say, if you compare to Germany, the UK, you have to wait a lot more there. But at least for the time being, it's a lot better here. But for example, some of the, like, we don't have the same drugs and treatment that are reimbursed like in Germany, in the UK, for example. And let's say if someone comes with clinical trial that and usually these drugs are very very expensive, like imagine even biologic drugs, for example, or some like gene therapy I don't even want to mention, but like there are lots of treatments that, let's say, for one reason or another, they decided to not reimburse here, and then you have to pay out of your pocket, but they are very expensive drugs, and actually for the standard of the country, that's not very feasible. So then people are way more open to join these clinical trials because for them even the control group is an exciting opportunity,
Yeah.
even if it's not, let's say, the new component. So yes, this definitely impacts the motivation. And another example I wanted to give you is to share was a few weeks ago. We worked with a company with very interesting like new like treatment idea, and they wanted to compare to a very new treatment on the market. But in their eligibility criteria, the patients that are eligible should have been at least 2 years on this treatment before they're eligible for being on a part of the clinical trial. And in the States, that was absolutely fine because this new treatment that is in the control group has been approved and it's on the market for at least 3 years. So you had a year to actually, like, for these patients to be on this treatment. But all of and they opened a bunch of sites everywhere because it was a global study by that time. And they opened also, like, Romania is one of the best recruiting countries. That's actually a mistake that I see all the time, going to Poland, Romania, and even Bulgaria, thinking, oh, these countries recruit so well, I'm gonna go there and they will definitely speed up my timelines, my everything, only to find out that Romania does have this treatment, but only for 1 year. So there were no patients that were on this treatment for 2 years, no eligible patients.
So
So
such a good example.
yeah, so that's an example that that reminds me of that. Actually, Esther, that is a great transition to the topic of real world data, your new domain. Let's put it that way. I can't wait to hear more because I also don't know much. You just mentioned that last time we were discussing this episode. Um, Actually, can real world data help us understand better this access to treatment, the patient journey? And yes, how do you see real world data fit into clinical trials?
Oh, it's my favorite topic now. Right now, it's what I'm completely entrenched in real world data right now. I have something going on at Bezyl that I'm really really excited about. So I remember back when real world data became the fad on the street. Like it's something that we were all talking about because we knew that we were going to learn things that we didn't even know what those things were going to be, and we didn't even know how powerful real world data could be. Like the people that were the experts in real world data, we looked up to them, but even they didn't know how powerful real world data could be. And the starting point for real world data came from looking at the patient journey, looking at their standard of care, looking at their reimbursement and the things that we knew were probable to have happened. So just because, and the reason why I use the word probable is because just because you prescribe a drug to a patient, there's varying numbers depending on who you ask, but it doesn't mean that they filled that prescription. So it doesn't mean they actually took that prescription. I am a classic case of, yeah, the doctor is going to prescribe something to me and I'll probably never fill the prescription for whatever reason. And that's not an uncommon behavior. So
No.
real world data in the healthcare systems, no matter what country you're looking at, what system you're evaluating, has its flaws. But it gives us general idea on patient journey. So we have an idea, like if there was a prescription made, whether the patient took it or not, it was made for a reason. So there's something that's tied to it, and perhaps there's a disease or a pain or an adverse event of some kind that was happening that was being handled. But then there's this other part of real world data that I think is even more important, and that is the patient's life and what it is that they need in their life to improve their life. And right now at Bezyl, we have the very unique opportunity to actually get the data from the patients' mouths themselves about what it is that they need, what it is that they're doing, kind of what their life is like. And it goes back to our original conversation in this episode about what is the patient journey. And I said that there's three prongs, and one of those prongs is everything going on in their life. And we can't forget that prong.
Mm.
So if we tie real world data to the patient journey, all three of those prongs, it's much more accurate. And so one of the things that we are able to get now with our patients at Bezyl is we see what people are asking for from each other. And we're able to things like I'm lonely, or I just want to chat, or I need a ride, or we get some really interesting ones. Childcare and pet care, of course, those kind of things come up, and this is part of real world data. The other thing that we get is we're able to cross compare those things with what is going on in their lives, depending on the population. Not everybody in Bezyl we get to see this, but depending on our customer, and some of our customers are in healthcare now, so we're able to compare against their data and our data, and really bolster it and really get into the nitty gritty of what it is that defines a patient's journey, and helps us learn what it is that they need in their life to be more successful in their journey. And of course, a lot of this comes from the mental health model that we've created, but by supporting mental health, we're able to look at life stressors, the things that we can
Mm.
add. So if I love to use the example of my friend who died, who inspired Bezyl, Lori. When she died, before she died, like weeks before she died, and she was telling me, I have a 2-year-old daughter, and I just need people to come over and read to my daughter. And I get lonely a lot, and I just wish that I had somebody to chat with me during those lonely times, and it was easier for me to let my friends know I need that. Uh, Pain. She
Mm.
had no good way of documenting properly her pain in her journey. So she had colon cancer. And of course, it was late stage, very, very late stage. And she went through a lot of pain. And so, in the current model, we don't have a way of being able to document the type of pain she was experiencing, how often it was, and how severe it was during those times. Because what happens is she goes to her doctor's visit, and she has to remember the last 3, 4, 6 weeks or whatever it is, or last sometime, unfortunately, in the last 72 hours, of like what that pain was like. And so they get a general idea on her pain scales, but it's not that accurate. And she complained about this to me. But she also hated, like, there's a lot of companies out there, and many of them are my friends. So I love the intention, but she also was like, no, there's no way that I'm going to use like a very cumbersome journal to document my pain every single time I have pain. I need something easier to be able to
Yeah.
document it. But she, like, things like pain, the loneliness that she experienced, the fear of death, the anxiety of like, how am I going to continue to be a mom for this last few weeks of my life? None of that gets documented. And so now with the Bezyl app, we're really working hard on how can we make it as easy as possible for a patient to document their own journey from their own real lives. And it's not looking like what we saw before, where we take
Mm.
those data points along the way from the providers. It's not looking the same at all. Hopefully, within this next year, we can actually publish some of this research we're doing, where we're showing like what a patient's documented journey is alongside what we
Yeah.
would have documented before, is actually quite different. Not only are we missing things, but we're also recording them incorrectly,
Mm.
because they don't happen the way that
Yeah.
the system is recording that they happen. Uh, and so I think that it's really important for us to take a step back, and recognize that we have this opportunity with looking at data and being able to find all of the different places that we can find data, and measure it, evaluate it, leverage AI like we've never leveraged AI before, and even machine learning so that we can be more suggestive to patients to help them
Mm.
along the way. But there's this massive opportunity in the world right now where we can really take real world data and help make the lives of patients so much easier. And I think that in the clinical trial world, we are positioned perfectly for this if we would just take the invest the time and the money into like doing it right. Um, I understand the need of pharma to get a drug or a therapy to market as quickly as possible, and that still needs to happen. That priority can't be lost. In fact, it needs to be strengthened. But when we sit back and we look at the ways that we can collect data and the things that we can collect data from and what we can learn so that we can move along that pathway better, I think we can be doing a much better job than we are today.
Actually, that was exactly my last question. What are the implications, Esther? Like now, speaking to like to the pharma and biotech companies and the CROs, if they don't understand the patient journey, if they don't use standard of care, real world data, insights, what will happen with their clinical trials at the end of the day?
I think that we're losing a lot of opportunity by not understanding patient journey. And I'll always say understanding patient journey is first and foremost our responsibility as humans. That's going to be my platform that I'll always say. But just purely from a financial perspective and our ability to further science, if we don't understand the patient journey, then the drugs and the therapies that we're pushing out into the commercial world are not going to be as effective as they should be. And we need to be able to be more representative of the populations that we're providing those drugs and therapies to. And we need to be able to be pushing not just from an ethnicity perspective and a global perspective, but also from individual needs and what they're actually going
Yeah.
to use. Like adherent, I'm not even going to get into adherence to treatment in this episode, but that could be like a whole. We should get Bernard and we should have that conversation together. But I think that we're losing the opportunity to provide the most personalized medicine to people by not understanding the patient journey. And if we want to personalize medicine and treatment and care, we have to invest in understanding patient journey for real. But
Mm,
not like,
yeah.
they people say it's the 80-20 rule. We're not there. We're not at 80-20. We're
Mm.
lucky to be at 60-40. That
If
is
actually
even
we are
arguable.
there, yeah, that's very
Yeah.
arguable because maybe we're 60-40
Yeah.
in countries like in the United States, but I would argue that everything outside of the United States, including Canada,
Yeah.
we're not at 60-40
I would
because
agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
because all these other countries have a completely different healthcare system, and all the people that I speak with, uh, let's say primarily based out of the states, not all, but the majority of them don't even recognize what this difference means for the actual, like for the patients, for their
Yeah.
eligibility, for their availability, for their motivation, and so on and so forth. Esther, thank you so much for once again making the time to speak with me, to sharing your insights, incredible stories. From the conversation, I can see that there will be one more episode sometime like in the future, but it's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to
Of
speak with
course.
you and keep us posted on your work with Basil.
Definitely. Thank you, Maya.